Okay, so moving on with our mock-up. In past videos, we have gotten our body all put together, got our binding in place, surface textures looking pretty good. We got our reflections and our shadows worked out. We've learned a little bit about controlling light so that things look the way we want them to look, that they, represent our design. So what we're going to move on to today is getting the neck and the fretboard. Well, pretty much the fretboard, since this is a straight-on shot. I'm going to get that modeled out today and show you just a couple of simple techniques. This video is going to move pretty quickly because there's not a whole lot to it. So here we go. What I've done is I've brought in a layer, which is just a fretboard that I cut out from another guitar. If you remember the blue guitar that we laid on top of our mock-up in earlier videos, this is just the fretboard from it. I've cut it out just simply using the polygon lasso tool. You just draw around it in your actual photograph and copy and paste it into this document. It'll come in on its own layer. We have our original image here. It's changed to a background, not necessarily needed for this, but just again to reinforce that concept that if I were to bring that straight in and open this document up or this file up, it would come in as a background. But so I've already converted that to a layer by double-clicking on it, renaming it our original image, and it contains all of the flattened layers from our previous tutorials. And I did that just to keep this project a little cleaner and easier to make sense of when we're looking at the layers palette. So we have our fretboard from another photograph, and we're just going to use this as a guide. None of the actual pixels or imagery from that will end up in our final comp. It's just there as a guide. And I have already saved out an image. I'm going to go in here to my tutorials folder, and I have a piece of rosewood that I cut out of a photograph. It's just rosewood that I have sitting in my closet, and it's pretty well shaped to what we're doing here. I'm going to hit Control T and expand it just a little bit to better fit inside those bindings. And all I did there was I opened up the document, and then just by taking my move tool I was able to drag it into our new project here. So I'm just going to center this up on the on our fretboard, and that looks pretty good. And you'll note out here that the rosewood that I brought in is rectangular still, and at some point it will need to be tapered because on most guitars, if not all that I'm familiar with, the fingerboard is a little bit wider at the neck pocket than it is, or substantially wider on some, at the neck pocket than it is at the nut. And that's why we see the binding of the Paul Reed Smith neck kind of tapering off underneath our rectangular piece of rosewood. And that's fine. We can do that later on, but we don't want to do it now because it doesn't make sense for our process right now to do that. So first thing we want to do, you can see with the rosewood in place, there is a binding on the Paul Reed Smith, or the neck that we have sitting behind that. So what I want to do on this particular guitar is I'm going to put a quilted maple binding on it to match the faux binding that we have on our guitar. And to do that, I'm just going to go in and open this, and again I have a piece of maple quilt, and this is the same photograph that we used for our quilted top, so it's going to match out really nicely. I'm going to grab that, drag it into the project, and I'm going to scale it up considerably because that's what we did in our previous project. We had to just to get things to scale. I'm going to just grab Control T and just size it up quite a bit, and I'm going to drag it in the layer stack below our rosewood. Well, let me get rid of that. I'm going to drag it below the rosewood and just place it in the area that we know it's going to work for us. And now what we want to do, we're going to take our selection from the rosewood, so we just Control click, and I'm going to go to Selection, and I'm going to modify and expand that selection by 4 pixels. Now maybe we'll go... Sometimes you just have to tweak this and see what works. Yeah, I'm going to drop that selection and start over. Looks like 6 is going to be our sweet spot. So I'll go select, modify, expand, 6 pixels. That looks pretty good. Now with our quilted maple layer selected, I'm going to invert this selection because I want to keep all of the pixels that are within our current selection. So I need to cut away everything outside of that. So I'm going to go Control Select I, or Control Shift I, and hit delete. And there we have our maple binding around our rosewood fretboard. Pretty simple stuff. So I'm liking the look of this, so I'm going to go ahead and save this as Tutorial Guitar 2 PSD. Alright, so the next thing we want to do is we want to be able to have the binding sit on top of any frets or other things that we do. So if we're not 100% accurate with drawing out our frets, that maple binding is going to hide that. And currently it's sitting below the rosewood. So what we want to do is just like we did with our faux binding, but we're going to do just a simpler version of that. We're going to go down to our rosewood, and then make the control click to make that selection. And with our maple layer active, we're just going to hit delete. And now what that's done is it's cut away, let me get rid of this too, it's cut away all the pixels below what the pixels that were below the rosewood. And that's going to allow us to take our binding and now place it on a top layer. So now it's up here on top of our maple, or on top of our rosewood, excuse me. And that's important because we're going to be pulling out our frets using the straight line tool, and we don't want to necessarily have to get all of those perfectly lined up, and that maple binding will help us with that. I mean, you can, but this is just a little quicker, and it's a quality control step more than anything. All right, so now that we have that, I'm going to go to our model that we're mock-up, the model that we laid in there to help us with our mock-up. Oops, I'm going to get it selected, and I'm going to bring its opacity way down so we can just see the frets. And then, just on above our rosewood, I'm going to label this so it's a little easier to see what's going on. This would be our binding, and this is our, what do we call this? This is our photo. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save this. Alright, so we're going to go to our rosewood and we're going to create a new layer. And I have changed, excuse me, get this. I changed the resolution on my screen so my scan converter would work a little better. So some of my palettes are kind of out of shape. With our rosewood selected, I'm going to create a new layer, and this is going to be the first layer of our frets. And I want to go over here and just grab almost white. And we're going to come down here, and if we grab our line tool and set its value probably to, I'm going to say 3 pixels, and come in here, and if you hold the shift key down while you pull this line tool, it'll give you a nice straight line like so. And these aren't looking like much right now, we're going to do some lighting effects. Oops, I am missing the end of those. We're going to do some lighting effects to make them look a little more realistic, like they're actually in our shot. And just get these all pulled out. And there we go. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and just zoom in a little bit on this. And we can see those look pretty good. And we can turn off our photo for the time being. And I missed that one pretty miserably. So I'm going to go back in and redraw that one. And it looks like the one beside it as well. Okay. Now what we want to do, this is going to be frets 1. We're going to create a new layer. This will be frets 2. And we're going to go in here and grab kind of a darker gray, medium gray. And we're going to do the same thing, same 3 pixel wide line. This time though, I'm going to split the difference. I'm going to set up the center of my tool right on the left-hand edge of the line we did previously. And again, I'm going to hold down the Shift key and just pull that, like so, as we go down, and that's leaving a little bit of a bright spot. And we may want to make this a darker color when we get finished here, but for now, and remember, this is all about perception of light. So look at these up close like they are. They look a little silly. But if you study a photograph of a fret, you're going to see that it has somewhere, it has a bright spot and some shadowing of some sort to help with that, to help with the not with the illusion, but to help with the lighting, you know, to reflect the lighting that is currently shining on them. And that looks okay, but I think it's a little, our shadow side is a little light in color. So I'm going to go here to the icon on frets 2, and I'm going to control click that to make this selection. I'm going to bring that down a little closer to black. We'll edit fill, foreground color, and put that in there. That's better. So if we lose our photograph, we can see now we're starting to get a little bit of a lighting effect going on there. And I'm pretty happy with that, so I'm going to go ahead and, well, actually I don't want to do that. I'm going to switch my foreground color to black. I was going to merge these two, but I think to create a shadow layer for them, but I think I want it to be just the width of a single line, so I'm going to leave them separated for now. I'm going to go in here and just grab one of the fret layers, duplicate it, slide it down. We're going to call this Fret Shadows. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save my project. I'm going to control click this to make my selection, and I'm going to fill that with black. Won't actually see that at the moment, but if we grab our move tool and just nudge it over with the arrow keys, you can see that, well, that's an interesting phenomenon there. Anyway, we're going to blur it enough that that won't be an issue. Seeing a little ringing of white around that selection for some reason. I'm not quite sure why. I'm going to grab a fill tool one more time. That's better. Okay, so what I want to do is grab filter, blur, Gaussian blur. I'm just going to soften that about 2.5 pixels. And we're going to again grab our move tool and we want those just barely peeking out from behind the shadow side of our frets.